Hello and welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast, Series 3. Last year, we spoke to SDRs, BDRs, and people earlier on in their sales careers about their journeys, tips, and why people should get into the industry. This year, we'll be speaking with sales and business leaders about their journeys, how they've made their success, and their insights into sales as an industry, especially what needs to be done to change the perception of sales. I'm Lizzie.
I'm Kyle, and still for far too long, people have just been falling into sales. Through this podcast and by having conversations with industry leaders, we're looking to continue to change the perception of sales and make it a career of choice. On today's episode, we're joined by Ben Smith, Director of Business Development at ReachDesk. It's fair to say that Ben didn't have the most typical entrance into the sales industry. From being a professional ice skater to working in PR before making the move after over 300 applications into tech sales. As the first ever employee at ReachDesk, Ben has since progressed into a director position. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome to this episode of the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. Today we are joined by Ben Smith. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. And to start things off, please introduce yourself and tell the listeners about who you are and what company you're currently at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ben. I'm the Director of Business Development at ReachDesk. I was the first employee with the company, so I've been here for 3.5 years now. And I've seen this company grow from just me to over 270 employees that we have right now. We're a direct mail and gifting platform. So we help B2B sales, marketing, customer success, and now HR teams to fulfill all of their gifting needs for their prospects, customers, and internal employees.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Ben. And as you know, on the series, we're focused with speaking with people in senior or leadership positions right now, but we always love to start at the beginning. So actually, I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey into sales and quite a journey it's been. So from professional ice skating to PR and then into sales. I suppose the big broad question to start with is how and why did you get into the sales industry in the first place?
Yeah, so I was a professional ice skater. I skated with Disney on Ice for 5 years. And whilst I was on tour, I actually set up my own cafe business, and I thoroughly enjoyed the business aspect of what I was doing, and it kind of became my true love over ice skating. I was really heavily involved in the public relations side of Disney on Ice as well. So I was doing a lot of the interviews with and then coaching and mentoring the rest of the cast on how to do interviews. And that led me to really look for an opportunity within sales. Now, I really struggled when I got off tour because I didn't have a degree, I don't have an education necessarily. And that really, really made it quite difficult for me to get into a sales role, especially as a BDR. I must have applied for about 300 different business development jobs and just kept getting rejected and rejected. So I didn't have the best start to getting into this industry, but it just made me even more determined to be able to finally get there and do it. I then went from trying to be a BDR. I took 2 jobs in London, just moved here without a job and kind of took the risk, and it was all or nothing really for me. So I started as a intern at a PR agency, which was great. It gave me a lot of exposure into cold calling, being able to put on events, go and manage relationships with key journalists in London. And that helped me to progress to an account executive in the PR agency. And then from there, I was able to finally get my first job as a BDR, joining ReachDesk.
Amazing. So what a journey that is then. And obviously the all or nothing approach as well from moving to London and taking the PR opportunity there. So much to kind of unpack, I suppose, in that actually. You mentioned though, obviously being in Disney on Ice and then you set up your own, I suppose, side business that became your passion. Definitely want to dig into that. But actually just to touch on what was it like actually being a pro ice skater, particularly at Disney on Ice?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was such a privilege to be able to skate for such a wonderful production and company. I've made friends for life from being on tour, and many of those I'm lucky enough to be able to see as I go and travel back to the US now, which is fantastic. I think being a professional ice skater, it's definitely given me the foundations and a lot of the skills that I see people needing to be good in sales as well. It's definitely we come across rejection quite a lot in skating. I must have applied for Disney on Ice about 3 times before they finally said yes, I was able to join. And I think performers in general face a lot of rejection from auditioning and interviewing for different productions and different roles. So I think that's helped build a bit of a thick skin and kind of what you need when you're on the phones cold calling every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, then you mentioned so you set up this side business that yeah, you really enjoyed doing. What kind of motivated you to set up that business actually?
Yeah, I just saw an opportunity really. You know, we were on tour, traveling to a different city or country every week, and it became really hard to find food when you're working so much in such random countries, and sometimes they were in the middle of nowhere. So I used to go and fill up a cart and would have crates of cooking equipment, fridges, ovens, everything on tour with me, and then be able to sell back food to the rest of the cast.
Oh wow! So saw a little bit of an opportunity then in terms of all the travelling and took it. But no, that's absolutely incredible. And on that, actually, more of like a genuine question though. What was the best place you visited when you were doing actually the ice skating?
Yeah, best place I visited. So I love Japan. Japan was an incredible experience. I was able to be there for 3 months and travel to, I think, 6 or 7 different cities there. It really was a complete culture difference in terms of what I was used to, but for all the best ways possible.
Great, no, incredible. And then, of course, you mentioned then that love for that business really kind of drove that love or that real desire to get into the sales industry. Out of interest, when did you first hear about the sales industry and sort of BDR roles?
So it wasn't until I was getting off tour actually, and I remember my first thought of business development was, you know, the people on the streets that were signing people up to charities or different subscription services, and that's kind of what I wanted to start with, and that's what I was starting to interview for. I couldn't land a job doing that either. So it was definitely that was my first insight into what a BDR role could look like. And my best friend at the time, he was also a VP of sales in a tech company, and that was also very inspiring to me because I was able to see the great things that he was able to do in his job on a daily basis and how he was motivating his team and the instant results that the business development team would be seeing from the work that they would be doing as well.
Sure. Okay, brilliant. So you had sort of a friend in the industry, also, yeah, had that desire to get into what you wanted to do. And it's interesting because we speak to a lot of people, I suppose, in sales at the moment, and a lot of the answers we get when they ask them why they wanted to join or where it came from was that they fell into it. They just kind of stumbled across a job post, and that's how they got into the industry. Whereas, as you mentioned, you applied to over 300 BDR roles. It was clear that you had such a huge desire to get into this industry before you were in it. What really drove you to want to do sales? Like, what was the main motivator for you to think, oh my gosh, this is the career I really want to go down?
I think it's the diversity of the role, and you can really be your own boss. Even though you're working for a company, it's really on you to make the most of it and to take it where you want to take it. Every day you're building a book of new business and business development, and you're reaching out to exciting new prospects that are generally just as curious and interested to learn how they can do better in their role and better for their company as you are. So the role itself and the people that you get to work with and talk to every day, it's just very inspiring and motivational. And it's great that no matter if you're a BDR or a CEO, you can still have very mutual conversations, and you're effectively there to achieve the same thing, and that's to drive business excellence.
Oh, fantastic. Great. And obviously, you've progressed incredibly since joining ReachDesk, which we'll definitely touch on. And then, just out of interest, though, obviously, with the ice skating, that was such a huge part of your life beforehand. Is that something that you still do, or is that something that's still of interest of you?
It's not, unfortunately, no. I'm on to life number two, as I call it now. So I've retired from that life and moved into this one.
No, fair enough. Perfect. And out of interest then, because I suppose one of the huge reasons why we're doing this podcast is about the perception of the industry and trying to make it a career of choice for people. What was your perception of the sales industry before you actually started at ReachDesk?
To be honest, it wasn't. It's just not a well enough known industry, I don't think. I think people do have a perception of sales in terms of it still being quite negative, when actually sales is the complete opposite. There's so much skills and talents that go into becoming a great salesperson. and people make a huge successful careers in this industry. So I don't think I had necessarily a perception of sales, but I think it was just a lack of awareness of everything that goes into being a great salesperson. And the cross collaboration now that great salespeople have to do with marketing, with enablement, with all the different, product, customer success, all the different functions in a business, you really do get good exposure to every department in the company. And I think that's a really unique role to have within a business.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, perfect. And then obviously then since joining ReachDesk, you've progressed incredibly well. In just 9 months of joining, you progressed to a team lead role. And then since then, you've received a number of promotions, which is obviously incredible to see. Out of interest though, for that initial promotion from a BDR to a team lead, how actually did you go about going into that route, and why actually did you choose that team leadership role?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very fortunate at ReachDesk, and the co-founders who I was working really closely with, they gave me an opportunity to see if I would want to continue my career as an individual contributor and as account executive, or if management was something which I wanted to specialize in and focus in. So I had the opportunity to work a few deals, and I managed to close one deal, which I'm going to cling on to probably for the rest of my life. But um, that was really a critical moment in my career to see if I enjoyed the account executive route, or if it was that business development leadership, opening up new opportunities. And I think I'm quite a fast-paced person. I like the instant gratification, and to see things progress quite quickly. I would say I probably get a little bit frustrated when things are a bit slow and don't move so quickly. So I think for me, business development is really the function which I love and adore, because you can be having a terrible day one day, and then you can be having the best day of your life the next day. And it's really that those quick wins that you see on that um, those quick wins are just great for me. So
No, amazing. And then actually touching on that you mentioned you closed that one deal. What was that like? How did that come about?
it was good. It was good fun. The negotiating was fun. I loved that. That was very. I always remember that moment where the prospect called me up, and I was in the office with everyone, and we were just thrown into negotiation just on the spot, which yeah, it was a bit scary, a bit intimidating, but we it went well. So yeah, I was very happy with that.
Yeah, clearly went well. You closed the deal, so all good stuff there. But amazing. And then actually then touching then on kind of going through that the route as you mentioned, then going into sort of management and starting to coach other people. Then how did you find that transition?
Yeah, it was tough. Really, really tough. I think management, I just didn't understand at that point everything that goes into being a good manager, and I've definitely had to make a lot of mistakes and fail fast to learn how to be a better manager. Still wouldn't say I'm a good manager, but I'm definitely trying my best every day to keep improving. Um, for me, it's all about just really caring for the team. I think if you can generally care about the team, then people generally want to do good things for you, and they trust in you to help them do good things for them as well. So I think that's probably my style of leadership has changed a lot from when I started to being quite almost like a bit of a dictator leadership, because I just didn't have the skills and knowledge and awareness to be able to motivate people in a way which they want to be motivated, or understanding how to coach the individual. There's definitely an element, I think, where you need to manage the team but coach the individual, and I think that's something which I've really been working on as a manager, and hopefully getting better and better every day.
Sure. And yeah, we'll definitely touch on, I suppose, developing high performing teams and how you've kind of gone about that then. What were the main challenges do you reckon that you faced then in the initial instant of changing of I suppose transitioning into management?
Yeah, I think it's always difficult when somebody takes on a manager role when they've been an individual contributor within a team, because you suddenly become a manager of the people that have been your colleagues and your peers. And that's always something quite difficult to navigate. Now, I've been able to have that experience before, completely different industry, but when I was working at the bars, restaurants, from kind of being a peer and then moving into a manager role. So I've had exposure to that before, and I think that's something which really helped me as I transitioned at ReachDesk into a more of a manager role. Um, I also just think that if you work with great people, then they're just as excited and happy to be working with you. And we essentially always learn from each other. So it was never coming into a manager role where I was going to make immediate changes. It was definitely learning how to take the ideas and best parts of everyone to build that team.
Sure, nice. And I suppose then, what advice would you give to someone who wants to follow down that same route that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I think just patience, just be kind to yourself, be kind to others. It's not going to happen overnight, and you will get things wrong. And don't let yourself get frustrated or annoyed when things do go wrong. Just take it as learnings. Be honest, be truthful, and communicate to people every step of the way. I think that's probably my biggest advice there.
Great advice, Ben. And just one, we're going to move on to, I guess, talking about the high performing team and what it's like to develop that. But just a couple of things to touch on before we do so. You mentioned about being the first employee right at the beginning. What was that like? Because most people, when they join as a BDR, have infrastructure, a team, people have maybe been in the business before and done it. What was it like being the first one in the door?
Yeah, so it was incredibly rewarding to join the company, and I'd wanted to be a business development representative for such a long time that when it finally happened, there was nothing which could get in the way to make this work. I was incredibly lucky that the founders that I was working directly with, they are incredible. They'd set up a business previously which had been successful, so they'd also made mistakes early on in their careers, which they were able to help me learn from those mistakes that they've made, but also I just had such great trust in them that this business was going to be fantastic as well. Um, the other part of being the first employee in the business is that you can afford to get things wrong because there's no one to compare yourself to, which is it was kind of great because I've never done the BDR role before myself, so it's really setting everything that we did was brand new and fresh and exciting. So yeah, it was good, really good experience.
Yeah, I think being the first one, you just get, I mean, there's always a debate. Do you join a startup at the beginning or a more established business? But I think the exposure you get from joining, I mean, being the first one in, you are naturally going to be exposed to things that people that join a much larger business might not necessarily have the kind of privilege to do so. So it's really interesting to understand what that was like. And I also think there's something in what you said before about 300 applications, just learnings that people can take. People that are on the job search, keep going. I think you're the perfect example of that, but also for businesses, just to be really open, on the criteria and the people that you look to hire. Great salespeople, there isn't really a blueprint in terms of profile and background that makes a great salesperson. And again, I think you're kind of the perfect example of that, Ben. Just to come back onto what it was like being the first employee. Can you remember, we spoke about your first sale you closed before. Can you remember your first ever meeting that you booked?
I can remember my first ever meeting I booked. It was a cold call, so I met somebody's team at an event, and they gave me the right person to call, and I went away into a booth because before it was me and the three co-founders were sitting on one desk, and it was quite intimidating
Mm.
making phone calls around them. Now it's fine, but definitely back then it was. I would for the first one I took myself away into a booth and psyched myself up and said, "This is it. I'm gonna make my first ever cold call." And the person picked up the phone. They were driving, but was on loudspeaker, so it was all good. And we had a 16-minute conversation, which is quite a long time for a cold call, and was able to book that meeting in, which was incredibly exciting. I was shaking like a leaf. I think the whole phone booth was probably shaking with me, but it was so rewarding to come out, go back to the table with the founders, and be able to say that I just booked my first meeting over a cold call, which was awesome.
And was that the first ever cold call you'd made in a BDR role?
It was, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
If only it was like that all of the time, Ben. That'd
I
be
know
great,
it was
wouldn't it?
it, it was a complete fluke, but at least they picked up and it was relevant and they wanted to hear more, so it was
Yeah.
good.
Cool. Just on that then, before we go into kind of the high performing team stuff, you mentioned you've done a couple of LinkedIn posts where you kind of praised outreach and also shared some advice on what makes a good cold call. I think there was a post you did where you spoke about one that you actually received. So, in your opinion, what are the key elements or the things that you tell your BDRs and your team that make a really good cold call?
Yeah, I think a lot of what makes a good cold call actually comes into the preparation before the call even starts. I think if you know, essentially, if you try and sell to everyone, then you're going to be closing no one. So if you already know the defined people that you should be selling to, and you get a really good understanding of who they are, what they care about, what the challenges could be, then that really sets you up for success on that call. So as much as when we're crafting emails and we're doing written outreach, we have to be really, really personalized and relevant to the individual. I think when we're doing cold calls, we have to be really relevant to the persona and really understand what it is that's going to get them to be really curious from an early stage in that call. Essentially, we need to win that curiosity as early as possible because that's going to help keep them on the phone for longer and keep them from being curious, move them from being curious to being interested about what it is that your product does. Because essentially, the people that you call cold, they're not going to be they don't care about your products. They don't care about the features. They care about the challenges that you can help them with. So if you can be super relevant to those challenges and generate that curiosity early in the call, then I think that's going to lead to a great call.
Yeah, good advice. They do not care about you. Maybe more so what you can do for them, but certainly don't care about your features or kind of benefits at that stage for sure. And there's always a bit of debate about this, is I guess the trade-off between how much research and preparation you do versus quantity of calls. So how much time would you recommend people do spend on that prior preparation before making a cold call?
Yeah, I think it comes into to full-on cadencing, sequencing your outreach as a whole. I don't think you need to spend any more time researching somebody before you pick up the phone as you do to when you start to try to outreach and get their attention in the first place. We use a method called 3 by 3 here, which is 3 minutes to research three things about your prospect. So that could be something on the contact, something on the company, and then looking for a hook or trigger, which is a compelling reason why that company or that contact would want to work with us. So if you keep your research to 3 minutes, then you can use that across three different written emails. You can use that in your social selling, in your LinkedIn outreach, in your in-mails, in your videos, and then also when you get somebody on the phone, you've got three compelling reasons that they might be wanting to work with you.
Yeah, the power of three always works well. I think 3 by 3 is a really good way to put that together. Um, moving on then to kind of the transition you spoke about before. So BDR team lead, obviously director of business development now, and I know something that's quite important to you, Ben. And I think you did a post or shared your BDR team mission statement recently, which was you aim to be in the top 1%. So basically, always looking to be a high performance team with a constant desire to improve. So I guess first of all, where is that kind of mission statement and desire actually come from for you or the rest of the business?
Yeah, so that mission statement's actually come from the team. I think the team know that we have incredibly high standards here because that's important when you come to work. It's everyone's time, it's everyone's commitment, and I think everyone at ReachDesk wants to be working with the best of the best, and that's a commitment that we make to ourselves and to each other. Now that comes in two parts. It's the commitment to work hard and to be the best, but also whilst we're doing that, we're going to make sure that we're caring for ourselves, each other, and for our customers as well. And I think that's really important to have that balance of wanting to be the best, but being humble in the way you go about it, and also making sure that you're caring for everyone along that journey as well.
Cool. And this isn't at all the high performance podcast. I know that already exists. But from what you've said, what is it that makes a high performing team or high performing BDR team at ReachDesk, for example? Like, what are the metrics and measurements for that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely focus more on the quality over quantity, and that comes into the way that we performance manage and how we coach people as well. So we never want to be, as a last resort, we will be talking about activity, but what we really care is about the quality of those activities. So if we're looking at call metrics, for example, we would be looking at how many connect calls are you making. Um, and then how often you're able to convert a connected call into a meeting booked. What is it within that connected call that's happening, which is potentially slowing you down or stopping you from being able to progress that conversation in the way which that conversation needs to be moving. So for us, it's all about the quality and really understanding what's happening within the activities to help coach and get people to where they want to be.
Cool, brilliant. And kind of it stems into this because it's a bit of a competition, but I've seen that you are launching a Battle of the Phones, I believe it's called, with 12 teams. It's like a sales competition, isn't it? Now, this episode's likely to be released once, well, we probably know who the winner of that is, but just tell us a bit more about this competition and what you're looking to achieve from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably the fourth round of Battle of the Phones that we've set up. It started with myself and Anastasia, one of the BDR managers at Outreach, and really we just identified the need within our teams to go a bit further and have a bit more of a learning essentially from other companies and sharing that knowledge and getting that knowledge from other companies and what's working well for them. If we continuously just look internally and keep looking at ourselves of what's working, what can be improved, then we're not fully getting the best ideas or learning something new. So it started with it really being a knowledge sharing session. So we would work with a different company, understand how they're opening their calls, what's working for them right now, how they're handling certain objections, and also just getting a sense of the industry, what's going on in other people's businesses right now. It's a great way for BDRs to be networking and talking to other BDRs as well, and sense checking what they're doing and getting some new ideas. Um, and then we just scaled it out from there. So now we have some great sponsors that get involved. So this year we've got Cognism, we've got SalesScreen and Seismic, which are all contributing towards this competition and helping the top performing sales teams and BDR teams out there to compete for the title of cold call champions.
Cool. Well, when we promote this episode, we should know who the winner is, so we'll be sure to make a note of that when we're pushing this out. Then,
Great.
and kind of well, just one thing to touch on that you mentioned about knowledge sharing. I think that's a really interesting point because maybe aligned with the old school perception of sales. I think there's probably a lot of businesses that maybe are a bit afraid to share their ideas. Like these are our secrets. We don't want other people to know what we're doing. What if they tell a competitor? Like, how would you maybe sell the idea to another business of the advantages and benefits of doing something like Battle of the Phones or just sharing insight in general?
I think sharing insight is just so necessary in what we do. Whether it's an exec that pays thousands of pounds to go to an event and listen to inspirational talks and speakers and take ideas from them, or whether it's just talking to somebody else in your network or a mentor, then what I love about this industry is that we're always just so open, I think, to learning and to sharing ideas, and that helps the industry keep progressing and growing at the rate in which it is. So I think for this industry that we work in, that's something which has only been successful, and we should always continue to share ideas and share knowledge. And I think the best leaders out there listen to that knowledge and to that insight from other companies, and they take it and adapt it to their business and what's going to work for them or work for their team.
Cool. And you've just kind of touched on it then, but the next thing I wanted to speak about is we spoke about what makes a high performing team. Um, you were quite honest earlier in your journey as a manager or a leader, saying at the beginning, maybe a bit, dictator or dictatorship maybe, and have obviously progressed and I guess learned and developed over time. So probably still a journey that you're on. But what do you think makes a top sales leader then, or a top sales manager?
Makes a top sales manager. I think that manager needs to be comfortable with their leadership style and try a few leadership styles before they kind of settle into what works for them. The people that I've always looked up to and admire, they've always had a set of values which they hold close to them, and then they've been able to stick by that, and kind of any decision that they've made is based on those values which they really care about. But that takes time to really get to that point where you're able to say that you've got some values which you're comfortable with and you understand and you trust within essentially. I think as well, you're only as good as the people that you work with as a leader. I think the best leaders out there have really worked on their hiring process and are able to identify gaps within their team and certain traits within their team which then they need to hire for and fill. And I think you know that really is a huge skill to management is getting the right people in the room and the right people on the team that are going to elevate and keep pushing that team forwards. I always say that I need to be hiring people which are smarter than myself, and that's often not that hard, but that's that typically is always done me well, because if you keep adding people to the team that are going to be contributing ideas in a different way to how you can as a leader, then that's really going to help you progress.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. As a leader, you should be happy that you're not the smartest one. You should be looking to, as you said, bring in people that are smarter, have different ideas, because that way, what you come back to what you said before, always looking to having a desire to improve. That's probably going to be the only way that you're going to do it, really. And you mentioned then about values and kind of instilling these in the team. If you don't mind sharing, Ben, what are some of the values that you have as a sales leader that I guess you want the team to demonstrate on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I guess it comes back to our team's mission statement as well, and that's not from what I've driven anyway, but it's definitely developed part of the values that I really care about. I really care about hard work and really high standards, and just being proud of everything that you do in work. And you should always want to put your name to the work that you put out there. But then it comes into to really caring as well for the customer, for the individual, for yourself and your colleagues. So I think that's a really nice balance. And if I can make a decision, it always comes back to, would I put my name to this? Would I want our team's name to this? And also, have I done this in a way which I can say that we've really cared for each other and cared for that other person? Then I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Would I put my name to this? I think is a really good way to look at it, actually. And let's say there's someone in the team or just in a sales team in general that maybe isn't performing to the level. Maybe they are performing, but not demonstrating the values that you've just outlined there as well. How would you recommend the sales manager approach having a conversation with that individual to make sure they ever perform better or actually start to demonstrate the values that you're looking for?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a process to identifying, first of all, and understanding. We're all human at the end of the day, and there could be external factors which have come into to the performance issue. And if we can make sure that we're always being curious and always trying to understand and trying to learn, I think there has to be a good trust between that colleague and the manager. And the quicker you can build that trust and understand what motivates someone, what gets them excited, the real reason that they're here, and that's often going to be completely different to the reason that you're here, then you build a good level of trust. And with that level of trust, people should feel comfortable coming to you with an earlier time with what the real problem is. I think you also just need to give people the ability to be able to go and figure it out for themselves quite a lot of the time. Give them the foundations, give them the framework that they need, but set them in the task on their own to kind of figure it out what's not working, and then give them the support and guidance to be able to help fix that as you work through that development.
Yeah. Cool. Great advice. A really good stuff to talk about, I guess, just the makeup of a high performing team. And I really like the idea of the battle of the phones that you're doing as well. I think that shared knowledge and the competition as well, camaraderie is something that kind of really aligns well to sales. So appreciate the insight there. Want to move the conversation onto it's personal branding or online presence, LinkedIn, whatever you want to call it. And I guess to give a bit of context behind this, before this is, well, the second time, Ben, that we've ever spoken. But I must say, Ben Smith at ReachDesk is probably a name I've been familiar with for a while, purely because of LinkedIn posts, seeing you talking at events, just basically always popping up on a LinkedIn feed. And I know that personal branding is something that's quite important to you as well. So just tell us a bit more about, I guess, your experience on building a personal brand on LinkedIn, first of all.
Yeah, I think the founder of ReachDesk, Alex Ollie, he always had a great social presence and great presence within the community. Um, for me, it didn't really start as building a personal brand over social. It was generally just that's where my prospects were, and the people that I was trying to communicate with were hanging out. So I wanted to be contributing as much as a marketer was contributing in terms of producing content and producing blog posts and doing podcasts and webinars and going to events. I just really wanted to have that credibility within the people which I was selling to, because that was their job. They were creating content for the companies that they were working for, and if I could help educate or tell a story or get them interested in a completely in the way which they were trying to do for their business, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. I'm also a big believer in building up a really good book of contacts within an industry. So whether that was when I was working in PR or now in sales, those relationships that you start, they may start as a business relationship, but they'll be with you for life. There's so many people that started as a prospect and I knew nothing about them, which now I can drop a message to and get advice and help from them at any point. And it's just, I think that was a real turning point in my career when I started to be able to do that and form those deeper relationships with people a lot earlier on, and perhaps having a better brand on social has helped with that as well.
Yeah. Cool. I think one thing that was really interesting there that you mentioned was that's where your prospects, the people you were wanting to communicating with, were hanging out. There's a lot of salespeople. The thing we always get when we speak to salespeople or sales leaders, or we're not good enough on LinkedIn and we need to do more. I think if you're selling to a target market or persona that isn't on LinkedIn, then actually you probably, I mean, yeah, you probably benefit from it from a personal perspective, but there's probably no need to invest all of that time into LinkedIn. Your time's probably better spent on other outbound activities. But like you said, for you, if your target market are on there every single day, then it's a very, very logical thing to do to look to build that brand. But there is, that being said, a lot of people whose prospects and target market are on LinkedIn, and salespeople, BDRs out there now going, I don't know what to post. I don't have time for LinkedIn. I'm scared of what people are going to think and say about my post. So what advice would you give to any salesperson right now that's maybe got those thoughts that are going through their mind?
I think like anything, it's just about repetition and planning. So it does take time to start planning a social post, and you want to be proud of what you're putting out there, because you are putting something out there on the internet, and it's very,
Put your
very
name to it,
public.
as you said.
You're putting your name to it. So I think anyone who rushes a post for the sake of posting, or puts something up because they feel like they need to be committing to a post every day, then that's fine. But at least take some time and thought to think about why you're putting that up there, who the audience is, what do you want them to be able to take away from it, and are you essentially proud of putting that out there in the public and on the internet?
Yeah. And personal branding and LinkedIn is something that gets shared a lot for BDRs and SDRs to, increase activities, try and generate leads, to build relationship, as you said. How important would you say it is for sales leaders and managers themselves to continue with that when they do go up the kind of career ladder, just like you have, really?
I think it's hugely important. I think number one, it's great for the business that they work for to be able to keep an audience engaged from their network and keep expanding that audience as well. I think as well for their colleagues and the people that they work with, a lot of the time they can get a lot of advice from those social posts that those leaders are putting online. I know for a fact I put something online and it's been really, really helpful for my team. And they're like, why haven't you said this to us? And it's like, sometimes writing it down and putting it in a different channel makes you think about things in a completely different way, um, which you wouldn't do if you're putting together a lesson plan, or if you're um, in a one-to-one, or if you're doing a morning stand-up with your team and you're speaking things. Putting it in writing in a different format can really help collect your thoughts in a completely different way, and I think that's also very useful for the rest of the team.
Yeah. And we spoke before about sharing insight, knowledge, ideas, and you just said then about, again, the importance of what sales leaders can learn from LinkedIn too. But how often would you say you tend to give or take advice from other people in the sales community, specifically on LinkedIn as a platform?
I definitely do take a lot of information from LinkedIn, and I think that's something which I really adopted early on. at ReachDesk and in my sales career, especially coming into the company as the first hire. Like I had no idea what I was doing. So the things which I would do was definitely look at things on LinkedIn. I invested in mentors. I traveled to other BDR teams' offices and went and worked in their offices for a few days a week, just so I could get exposure to what other companies were doing and try and develop that for myself and then for the team at ReachDesk. It's still something which I try and do often, is go and work in other BDRs offices and get an insight into how their managers are managing the team, and how the reps are going about their day and what they might be doing. I think um, I'm terrible at reading. I've never read a book. I don't remember the last time I picked up and read a book.
We'll scrap
Um,
the what book would you recommend question then later on.
yeah, that's gonna be not a great question for me. I have listened to Radical Candor, which was an audio book, which was really good. But I typically tend to, for me, what works is getting a summary or listening to other people's advice and then adapting it and changing it to fit my own. Um, and that's something which has worked for me.
Oh, amazing. And then actually then to scrap the what book would you recommend question then, obviously you touched on mentors then, and just to get a bit of an insight, if you don't mind sharing, but who's like one mentor, maybe two mentors that you'd recommend in the sales industry, other people to potentially reach out to or follow on LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to give my mentors away because I need all of their attention for myself. No, but I've definitely I've changed my mentors. I've kept a couple of mentors for a very long time, and since I've taken on the management role. But I've also, looked elsewhere for different mentors and learned from their specific skill set and areas that I need to improve on at that moment in time. Definitely moving into this director role, I was reaching out to people which have been having that second level manager experience, because that's something which I'd never done before, and that's something recently which has been very helpful to go and seek those types of mentors. And I'm just always very grateful for all of their time that they've given me and the support they've given me, because the advice that you get from that and people that have gone through similar journeys to what you might be going through now is just so valuable.
Sure. And I think that's a massive thing. We speak to a lot of people on the podcast actually about how open the sales community is about sharing advice and helping each other out, especially if you're going through a similar journey to them. So I think that's a huge thing. So anyone listening who perhaps is going through a transition or a change, and reaching out to someone, finding a mentor is a massive piece of advice you could take. Great. And then just, I suppose, to finish off and conclude the podcast, I've got a couple of questions actually. One from LinkedIn. So we actually put a post out on LinkedIn asking people if they wanted to ask sales leaders any questions, and get your insights really. So this one comes from Alex Boronin from Container Exchange, and he has asked, "What do you or who, sorry, do you consider a successful sales leader and why?"
Who do I consider a successful sales leader and why? Good question. I've I've always looked up to Alex Ollie, the co-founder at ReachDesk. I think I've been fortunate enough to have a really good exposure to the way that he manages a team, manages the sales process, and I've just always been very inspired by him. I think somebody else is a leader that I've really God, there's been so many. Somebody else that I've really looked up to is Ollie Sharp over at SalesLoft. I think the way that he's developed the EMEA function for SalesLoft and the successes that they've been having as a company has just been huge. He's always really cared for mental health and the way, and he's just really cared for his team the whole way through it. No matter, imagine how much pressure he's come under. He's always been an advocate for caring for his team, and that's something which I also just hold close to my heart as well.
Great. And then to finally round it off, then, almost circling back to the beginning of the conversation where we talked about that initial perception of the industry and coming into it and realizing, how incredible sales is as a career path. In your, I suppose, perspective, Ben, how do we change the perception of sales?
I think we just need to continue hiring people from really diverse backgrounds, um, and not looking just at a CV and a piece of paper, and really digging in deeper to understanding what makes great salespeople and going out and finding them wherever they may be. I think we've got to keep talking about it on different channels as well. LinkedIn is a great channel, but let's make sure that whatever we're doing, we're going into universities a lot earlier, and companies are really investing in the future of sales, in the future of the industry by continuing to educate people a lot earlier on than maybe people are getting exposure into to however they're getting into sales right now.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. Please subscribe and follow for more. If you like this content, also please check out This Is Prime on all our social media channels, and also Kyle Gallagher and Lizzie Formisano on LinkedIn. See you next time.